Okay, so get ready, because today we are diving headfirst into some seriously strange stuff. We're talking paranormal people.
You got it.
You guys sent us a whole collection of Reddit posts, all from those subreddits where people share their, well, let's just say their unusual experiences. And we're here to unpack it all.
Right. And what's so interesting about these is it's not just your typical, ghost stories. We've got a bit of everything. We've got like these seemingly harmless spirits. And then we've got others that are just downright creepy. And then, of course, we've got those shadow figures, which just never seem to get old, do they?
No, they do not. It's like everyone's seen a shadow person at some point. Or at least that's what it feels like reading these. Like it's a whole buffet of bizarre encounters, and we are here for it.
Yeah, let's dig in.
So first up on the menu, we've got this post about a graveyard. And apparently, someone's been seeing figures waving from behind the gravestones.
Oh, wow.
And get this, they've been seeing it for years.
Years. That's a long time, so they just keep going back.
Apparently. Doesn't sound like they're too bothered by it either, which I find interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think seeing figures waving from a graveyard would be, at least a little bit freaky. But this person seems more curious than scared. It really makes you wonder, are these friendly ghosts we're talking about? Or is it something a little more, unsettling?
Right, like what's the vibe here? Are they waving hello? Or is it more like, help me?
Maybe they're just saying, hey, welcome back.
Yeah, maybe it's the graveyard welcoming committee. And, it's funny you mentioned the whole friendly ghost thing because one of the comments on the post simply said, I'd wave back.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Right, so not everyone's terrified, which I guess speaks to the idea that maybe, just maybe, not all spirits or ghosts are out to get us.
Exactly. And it's interesting, this idea of friendly spirits, it's not exactly new. Different cultures have had their own versions of, well, let's call them benevolent beings from beyond for centuries. Ancestors watching over us, guiding us, protecting us.
It's true, and maybe this is just a modern take on that.
Right, exactly. A modern twist on an age-old belief. And the fact that this person keeps going back to the graveyard and other people are commenting about waving back, it kind of shifts the perspective a bit, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so moving on from the waving graveyard, our next stop takes us to a farmhouse in New Hampshire. And, this one is a bit creepier. Yeah, definitely more of a classic haunted house vibe. So this person who posted, they start talking about these old latches on the doors that never seem to work quite right.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right, like that's never a good sign in an old house. Anyway, one day, they're just, going about their business, when suddenly a door just flies open out of nowhere.
And they didn't see anyone else there.
Nope, no one. At least not a living person.
Oh.
You see, this house, they think it might be haunted by a ghost named Helen.
Helen?
Yeah, and get this, it's not just the homeowner who's seen her. A visitor who stayed there claimed they saw her outside one day too.
Outside? Well, that's interesting, because if it were just inside, you might think, okay, maybe this Helen is attached to the house itself, But outside, that's different.
Right. So who is this Helen and what's her deal? Is she just like messing with people or is it something more than that?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The poster seems to think that Helen was a former resident, maybe even one of the original owners of the farmhouse.
Oh, wow. So she's been there a while.
Possibly. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because we have to ask ourselves, are we dealing with a residual haunting here or an intelligent spirit? You see, a residual haunting, it's more like an energy imprint, a recording of past events replaying over and over, like a ghostly echo.
Okay, so not actually aware of what's going on around it.
Exactly. An intelligent spirit, on the other hand, might actually be aware of the living and interact with them intentionally. So, is Helen slamming doors on purpose? Or is she just going about her old routine, completely oblivious to the fact that she's, well, a ghost?
That's kind of sad when you put it like that, just going about your business, unaware that you're no longer businessing.
It is a bit melancholy when you think about it that way. And there's another layer to this story that adds to that feeling. The person who posted, he mentions that he lost his wife while they were living in the farmhouse.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It really makes you wonder if Helen was aware of their grief, if maybe she was trying to offer comfort in some way, or maybe even connect with a fellow spirit.
Wow. That's a lot to unpack. So we've got a potentially mischievous ghost, a grieving widower, and a whole lot of unanswered questions.
And this is just one house. Imagine all the stories these old houses could tell.
Right. Okay, well, on that slightly eerie note, ready for our next story.
Hit me with it. What's next?
This one comes straight out of Florida. and it involves a child. And let's be honest, kids and ghost stories, always a winning combination.
You're telling me kids always seem to add that extra layer of, well, creepiness, don't they?
They really do. So this family moves into a house, and they start seeing a little girl.
Okay.
And not just like once or twice, like they're seeing her regularly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's not just one family member who's seeing her. It's like everyone's seeing this little girl independently.
So it's not just like one person's imagination going wild. Everyone's seeing the same thing.
Right. Like mom sees her, dad sees her, the kids see her. And here's where it gets really creepy. So the daughter of the family, she already had an imaginary friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? The imaginary friend matches the description of the ghost girl perfectly. White skin, black hair, red eyes.
Okay, now that's just chilling. I mean, that sends shivers down my spine. Just hearing about it, it's like, what came first, the imaginary friend or the ghost?
I know, right? It's like,
Yeah.
Did the imaginary friend somehow become real? Or was the little girl picking up on something, some kind of energy that her parents weren't even aware of yet?
It's definitely giving me those chicken or the egg vibes.
Right. And to make this whole thing even more intriguing, there's a twist.
There's a twist. Okay, you got to tell me.
So it turns out this house, built on a Native American burial ground.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so now we're talking about layers of history, potential energy, maybe even some restless spirits. And it makes you wonder, what role did the burial ground play in all of this? Was it amplifying something?
It's certainly possible. I mean, disturbing burial grounds is a big deal in a lot of cultures. It's seen as a major no-no. So, I mean, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that building a house on that kind of land could stir something up.
Right. It's like you're messing with something you don't fully understand, and then you're surprised when things start going bump in the night.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is how this story connects with that previous one about the farmhouse.
Oh, you mean with Helen?
Yeah, exactly. We've got these places, these homes that seem to be holding on to more than just memories. There's a sense of history there, of energy, maybe even of spirits that are tied to those locations.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And those energies or spirits, they don't always make themselves known in the same way, do they?
Not at all. Sometimes it's a feeling, a presence. Other times it's something more tangible, like those waving figures in the graveyard or the slamming doors in the farmhouse.
Right. And in the case of this family in Florida, it's a little girl who may or may not be a figment of someone's imagination.
Exactly. It's like we're trying to understand a language we don't fully comprehend.
Speaking of trying to understand things that go bump in the night, let's talk about another type of encounter that seems to be, well, pretty universal. The grocery store.
Wait, the grocery store? Like, the place where I buy my milk and eggs?
That's the one.
Okay, I gotta hear this. What happens in a haunted grocery store?
So we've got a family who owns a small market. It's closing time. They're just kind of tidying up, getting ready to lock up for the night. And their 14-year-old son, he's helping out by restocking the drinks in the cooler.
Okay. Sounds pretty normal so far.
Right. Totally normal. Until all of a sudden, a can of Dr. Pepper just comes flying out of the cooler, like full force. Almost takes the kid out.
Whoa, hold on. A flying Dr. Pepper, like a possessed soda can.
Pretty much. And what's even weirder is the mom's reaction. She just goes, oh, they do that now and then.
They. Who's they?
That's what I want to know. It's like she's completely unfazed by the whole thing, as if it happens all the time. You'd think a projectile beverage would warrant a little more concern.
Right. Like someone called Ghostbusters. Seriously. But it gets even weirder. So the kid, right after the Dr. Pepper incident, claims to have seen a girl standing in the aisle about his age.
Oh, no. A girl. Okay, this is getting creepy.
Yeah, and before he can even process what he's seeing, she vanishes.
Okay, so they have to have checked the security footage after that.
Right. First, they check the security footage, and what they find, well, it adds a whole new layer of intrigue to this already bizarre encounter.
I bet it does. So what happened? Did the camera catch the mysterious Dr. Pepper bandit in action?
Not exactly. The footage shows the boy turning his head, presumably right after he sees the girl, and at that exact moment, the feed cuts out.
No way.
I'm telling you. It's blank for a few seconds, and then boom, right as the kid runs off to tell his mom about the girl, the camera kicks back on as if nothing happened. That's some seriously creepy timing.
Yeah.
Like someone or something didn't want to be caught on camera.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what else might those cameras have captured over the years?
And what about all the stories that don't get told, the strange experiences that people have in places that we don't usually associate with the paranormal?
Exactly. Like, it makes you think twice about all the seemingly ordinary places that might have a hidden and maybe even haunted side to them.
It's true. And it also speaks to something we've been touching on throughout this whole deep dive, this idea that maybe, just maybe, the veil between our world and the other side, it's thinner than we think.
You said it. All right, so we've got waving ghosts, haunted houses, a possessed soda can. You ready to dive into our next Reddit rabbit hole?
Hit me with it.
This one's a classic, and it always sends chills down my spine. Shadow people. And it's not just any shadow people we're talking about. Oh, no, it's the big kahuna, the one and only, the infamous Hat Man.
Oh, yeah, the Hat Man. Now, he's a character that pops up again and again in these paranormal stories, isn't he?
He really does. I mean, you've got your garden variety shadow people lurking in corners, maybe darting across the hallway when you're half asleep.
Yeah.
But the Hat Man, he's a whole different level of creepy.
Right. It's that hat, that wide-brimmed hat that everyone seems to describe. It's like, even shadows have a dress code. What's up with that?
Maybe it's like a uniform.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just easier to freak people out when you've got a good silhouette.
Maybe. But one thing's for sure, people tend to have some pretty intense reactions when they encounter this guy, like full-blown terror.
Right. And understandably so. You're telling me you wouldn't be freaked out if you saw a shadowy figure with a hat just watching you in the middle of the night.
I mean, I'd like to think I'm a pretty brave guy, but that's definitely going to leave a mark. But you know what's interesting about this particular Hat Man encounter that someone posted? It's the lack of fear.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No terror? No running for the hills?
Nope. The person who shared the story, they described seeing the Hat Man and feeling totally calm. Like, they acknowledged its presence, but they weren't afraid at all.
Okay, now that is interesting. So maybe not all Hat Men are created equal.
Right. It's like we're trying to fit all of these paranormal experiences into neat little boxes, but what if these boxes just don't exist?
I think you're onto something. Because even with something as specific as the Hat Man, you've got variations in the stories, different interpretations, different reactions.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating to me. We're dealing with the unknown here. We're trying to make sense of something that exists just beyond our understanding.
It's true. And maybe that's what draws us to these stories in the first place. The mystery, the unknown, the possibility that there's more to this world than meets the eye.
Absolutely. And whether you believe in ghosts or spirits or shadow people or none of the above, these stories make us think. They make us question. They make us wonder about the nature of reality itself.
They really do. And sometimes that's all it takes, isn't it? A little bit of wonder, a little bit of curiosity to remind us that we don't have all the answers.
Well said. We may never know for sure what causes these strange encounters, these glimpses into the unknown. But one thing's for certain, the stories will continue to be told. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.
It just might be. And hey, maybe next time you see something out of the corner of your eye, you won't be so quick to dismiss it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the paranormal. And remember, keep exploring the unexplained.